Hi, everybody. We have Sara and Nora from MyBirth. They're connected with MyBirth, and I'll have them tell you how exactly, but they're coming to talk to us about their experience with postpartum mental mood and anxiety disorders, um, kind of what they've seen through their work as training, to be a doula and being a doula for a while. Can you tell us a little bit about yourselves and your connection to MyBirth? Whoever wants to go first, either one.
Sure. I'm Sara Kravanik. I'm a birth doula with MyBirth. I've been a doula for 19 years, but I've been with MyBirth. I'm in my third year working with them. I'm also a certified lactation counselor. And then with Nora, we are volunteers with Postpartum Support Virginia. So we hold a monthly support group for perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. Our group is called Holding Space. So we're here to talk a little bit about that tonight.
And Nora, how about you?
Yes, my name is Nora Quinn, and I work with Sara on Holding Space, our support group that meets at MyBirth. And I got into this work after having personal struggles of my own with PMADs after the birth of my son, and was just looking for a way to be an advocate because I felt like there was not a lot of information out there. I felt like I had done a good job of informing myself as a pregnant person preparing for birth and asked all the questions, and I still somehow wound up with not enough information. So I felt like that had to be a more common experience than just something that I was going through, and reached out to Postpartum Support Virginia, who is a really fantastic advocacy group. I hope every state has something like them, but they provide a bunch of wonderful resources to medical practitioners and support groups for women and families in general that are struggling with PMADs. So I met Sara at the training for Postpartum Support Virginia, and then fortunately she was in working with the other wonderful ladies at MyBirth, and so we had a home for our group pretty quickly, which was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Postpartum Support Virginia has been one of the resources that I kind of turned to along with MyBirth, of just places to go to find information, because like you were saying, there's not a lot of information out there. I think I got a lot of pamphlets on postpartum depression, but it was still kind of like the baseline, and I didn't know that postpartum anxiety existed, and I didn't know about the other postpartum issues that were happening until like I was there in that little pool of, drowning. So it's great that you guys are advocating for that, because I mean, like you, I wanted to share and advocate for the things that I went through as well. So I think that's great that you guys have that as a mission. So you were saying a little bit about how you got involved with MyBirth, but can you tell us a little bit more about what you do there and, the programs that you guys have there?
Sure. So there are 6 birth doulas at MyBirth. Myself and Amy Lavelle and Emily Bruno, they are the owners of MyBirth, and we are each other's backups. So we have group prenatals together with our clients that are due around the same time. And then we also have our own private prenatals with our clients. A lot of it is education and support, and talking about options, and really just helping the couples that we work with to see that they can have a low intermittent birth. They can do the work of birth without a lot of intervention. And then we also really do talk about afterbirth. So a lot of postpartum education and resources, and breastfeeding support, lactation support. We also have postpartum doulas at MyBirth. We have yoga we have childbirth education, we have lactation classes, lots of support groups too. So holding space is one of them. We also have a breastfeeding group called Boobies and Babies that I lead, and La Leche League meets at MyBirth when we're in normal times. And then there's a first year moms group too. So there's lots of different supports for pregnancy and birth and postpartum. So they really came to create MyBirth with the idea of it being like a one-stop shop for everybody. So to just, you know, come to this one place over and over for all your needs and to really build community.
That's awesome. I think that's probably one of the hardest things that some women kind of struggle with, or some moms, of like, you go here and then you go there. And then, so like to have one central location where you can get all those services is really great.
Mm-hmm.
I think such a beautiful idea that, you know, sprung up in Richmond. So I know this is kind of not something that we discussed, but during the pandemic, how has MyBirth kind of switched over their services to be able to accommodate for that?
So everything has been virtual except for birth support. So all our normal prenatals that we would do in person, either at the office in Scott's Addition or in people's homes, are online. So that's been a little different, but we are going to births. Doulas are allowed at Henrico Doctors Hospital and VCU. So we just do more precautions with going to births, and we have to wear masks, and we're cleaning everything and stripping down right when we get home from births and washing everything, you know, so everything's a little bit different in that sense. But I tell my clients that when we're there, you know, doing the work together at a birth, it feels like birth. So that's been really good. And I feel like the team at the hospitals kind of have gone out of their way to really help everyone feel comfortable and safe. So it's, you know, it feels good. And it's a social event too, because otherwise we're at home. So I find that, like, when I go to a birth, I'm like excited to hang out with people.
I can see that. Yeah. When you're in your own little bubble, it's like, oh my God, I just need to see other people.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's been good.
That's good. And Nora, so with, I know you're training to be a postpartum doula.
Yeah, I totally blanked on saying that. Yes, I've been training to be a postpartum doula as well.
Yeah. So how do you think that, well, like if you complete your training and become a postpartum doula within this pandemic, like how do you think that looks as far as being a postpartum doula for a mom? Like, do you have, I mean, it's hard to tell now, but how do you foresee that kind of working just for moms that, you know, would want a postpartum doula now, or, you know, in the future?
Definitely. I mean, I think the need is there even more now than maybe it is in regular times, just because we can't necessarily be there for one another. You know, a lot of times people lean on having a mother or a sister come, and depending on where people are in the country, there's just so many restrictions. So I feel like I know that postpartum doulas are actively working here in Richmond, and I think it's definitely something where we've seen an uptick in the case, you know, the senses of anxiety among new parents. And so I feel like it's even more crucial if you can provide a safety net for them. And just, there's so much unexpected when you're a new parent, and then even more so now for all of us. So I think just, you know, going in masked, washing your hands, whatever a family needs you to do to where they feel comfortable having your presence there. But I think absolutely that postpartum doulas could be a huge resource right now for people.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if I was having a baby now as a new parent, and not being able to have my family there to take care of me like they love to do, yeah, I can see a postpartum doula being exactly what I need. So I'm excited that you're in that work, and I think you're going to do great. So what are some common things that moms look for in both birth doulas and postpartum doulas? We'll start with birth doulas.
Um, I think a lot of it is they want to be heard. They want to know how do I go about having the type of birth that I'm looking for. So they're looking for like the support to do that, the education to do that. Doulas are evidence-based, and that's what a lot of couples are looking for. They want to have a low invasive birth. They want to try to avoid having a cesarean, maybe not being induced, possibly not having an epidural, and they know that there's lots of different ways to cope, and they want to be educated on, what that looks like, what's normal. But I find that, it's important that you click with somebody too. So there's a doula for everybody. Like you're going to, find somebody that you feel a connection to, you like their personality. But a lot of it is, support and education, to help you kind of build your confidence.
Yeah, I think those are important because going into a birth, especially if it's your first time, and especially now when you can't have a lot of people in the delivery room, having somebody who knows your plan, and not that it always goes to plan, but knowing what you want and advocating for it is really important.
Yeah, we hold this space, which is kind of like a word that I've always loved. So that's, when we thought about naming our group, like we hold this space with these moms too. But yeah, like we get to know the clients that we work with, and we remind them of what their wishes are, because we've talked about them extensively, and we can advocate for different things, ask questions, and make sure that they, it's really just to help them feel safe. To like we'll talk about like traumatic birth is something that can affect postpartum and how you feel afterwards. So it's like we want our clients to feel safe, to know what's going on, to have conversations, to not feel like things are like thrown at them or they're told this is how they have to do things. So I find that we build that relationship during the pregnancy. So when we're in birth, it feels very natural to like have these conversations, and they know that they can ask questions and advocate for themselves too. Like we help them to be their own advocates too,
Yeah, that's awesome. And so with postpartum doulas, what do people usually look for in a postpartum doula, and what services do you hope to provide when you become a postpartum doula?
Sure. I think the same thing. I think it will be, and in my own experience, I think it's very relationship based. Like you just want someone that feels sort of like a professional friend. There's a lot of evidence that women wind up having less occurrence of PMADs if they're able to like fully debrief within 72 hours about how their birth went. And, like Sara mentioned, traumatic birth, it's not really like if it's deemed a traumatic birth in the medical community, it's if the woman herself like was left alone and fearful at any point during her birth. And so that happens a lot more than we realize. And, as we know in our culture, women are not always listened to. And especially when you're home with a new baby, people in normal times, but even now, like, how's the baby doing? How's the baby sleeping? I think a postpartum doula can really stand in the role to mother the mother, ask her how she's sleeping, ask her what she needs, just make her focal, because a mother is a new role for her in the same way that it's a new baby. And that's something I think that gets forgotten in the haze of the newborn days. So, whether that's helping reassure her that her latch is right, or just seeing that she looks like she could really use a bigger water bottle beside her table. I think there's a lot of things that you don't know that you need to ask for, especially with a first baby. So just being additional eyes and ears for women, and families, partners as well. Like we know that when there is maternal depression, there's a higher rate of paternal depression too. And then you have two people kind of down for the count, with a whole world of new responsibilities. So just being an asset for a family that can do the things that they need without them needing to ask.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
is
I know it's hard for some moms to ask for what they need or even know what they need. So I know I had my mom stay with me for 2 weeks with both of my kids, and it was wonderful. But I didn't know how to ask for. I didn't know what I needed. I didn't know how to ask for water or, hold the baby so I can sleep. Like it just doesn't feel like I can do that. Even though she was there and she was willing to do that, but I think the
sure.
services of a postpartum doula can really eliminate the like guilt of having to ask for something.
Yeah, yeah, and I think sometimes too, like it sounds like you and your mom have a wonderful relationship, but every family looks different as well, and there can be sort of, well, we did this in my generation. Well, that's not the guidance now. Like, they're not supposed to sleep on their stomach. Like there's a lot of nuance that I think you feel guilty not listening to your parent. Like families are complicated, so sort of having an unbiased resource, even to help navigate those kind of crunchy moments between family members, can be helpful, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And so in talking about PMADs, I know, Nora, we had talked a little bit about how your experience with PMADs is pretty recent. And now have both of you experienced PMADs? Sarah, you have so?
Yeah.
You want to touch a little bit on your experiences? We can start with Nora if you feel comfortable.
Sure, of course. Yeah, so my son is almost 3.5, and I had a really long labor. It was 50 hours, but which is too much. But it was fine. It was okay. Like I didn't feel as though, like, I wouldn't put it in the traumatic birth category. I just wish I had known it could go that long. I should have read some more anime, I guess, before I got going. But yeah, I was just exhausted, and then came home. Things seemed fine. We bonded very easily and well, and my partner is very supportive. But as days and months went by, I was really jealous that he got to commute to the city. We lived in New York then. He got to commute to the city. I was still at home. It's where I wanted to be, but I also was kind of mourning having a broader life. And in hindsight, learning that rage is a symptom of postpartum depression and anxiety, I was so furious at him all the time. Like, he could do no right. My husband, not my son. I was not really frustrated with my son at all, but my husband really bore the brunt of it. That was a difficult time for our marriage. And I feel like that's not something that even, in childbirth education, when you have a captive audience, I wish they would say hey, this can be a hard time for people. Maybe talk about what your wishes are for one another in what can be a really difficult period. I just felt like we went into it kind of blind. So I was mad for a long time, crying in random doctor's offices, nobody telling me that it was anything to do with postpartum anything. No doctors asking me if I was still nursing, anything. So finally, when I weaned my son at 2 years, a few months after that, I started having really bad intrusive thoughts, and what was a sort of OCD manifestation of postpartum anxiety, and eventually landed, thank goodness, on the Postpartum Support Virginia page, which led me to the resources of maternal health care providers. And so got with a therapist that has helped me, find my way. And it's been an uphill battle since then. In some moments, it's not always tied up in a nice bow. But I feel like having information now that I just wish I had had before makes it a lot easier to cope with. And I just want to spread that as far and wide as I can. Every pediatrician's office, I feel like, should give out this information. Just what can it look like? Because I felt like I had really done everything I could to educate myself, and still wasn't able to diagnose it. My husband didn't know what to look for and felt guilty. It felt like the whole gamut. when really it's like all classic signs of PMADs, just no one had pointed me in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think our medical community is underinformed in a lot of ways about what this is. And hopefully, I feel like even in the short time that I've been, seeking this to do this kind of work, I feel like people are talking about it a lot more. And that is heartening. So hopefully, the more conversations like this happen, the more people will know and can just identify what it is, so they don't feel like it's just them losing it, because that's definitely what I felt like was happening.
Yeah, I think being aware is like, even though it doesn't go away, because we're always postpartum, even if you have older kids or,
It's like my mantra, postpartum is forever.
postpartum is forever.
It's forever. You're a mom now.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think like being aware, like you were saying, of the different symptoms that can happen with postpartum anxiety, depression, and the rage that can happen with that, then, when things happen that feel like those symptoms, you can kind of take a deep breath and be like, okay, this is probably the postpartum depression, knocking at my door. But you can kind of just rein a little bit of those symptoms and just know a little bit about why it's there. And, just instead of not being able to put your finger on it, you have a little bit of a grasp on it, being aware of it.
Yeah, and I think instead of like, people, it can be treated. That's like one thing that they underlined in our training with PSBA a million times, that like practitioners that work with moms that suffer with these issues, like they like to, because they will be cured. Like if you put in the work and you get the right help, then you will be cured. It's not something that has to go on forever, but it can if not treated. So I think, just knowledge is really always power, but especially in this situation, and knowing that like it's not just a fluke. Like hormones are very, very real, and that's a part of like the whole perinatal period that we don't really talk about, how the extreme waves, and there's no other part. Like it's more intense when a woman is in the perinatal phase than it is when a child becomes an adult in adolescence, which we know how it feels to be a teenager. Rather crazy. So to liken it to that period and then have a whole culture that doesn't talk about it, crazy.
Yeah, I've heard the term matrescence.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's like you're back in your adolescent days, but you're a mom, and like those two worlds kind of combining is just, for some people, it can just feel like very overwhelming and like you're going to explode. So, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your experience.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Sarah, turn it over to you. How was your experience? I can't even say the word. With
Yeah, so with all three of my kids, I've had different kind of experiences. So some was, I think, hormonal shifts, and then kind of the situational too. So with my first, I was a really young mom. And so I think some of that, even like during the pregnancy, I was kind of grieving what I was losing in some ways. And then my husband and I wanted to go in and have an unmedicated birth, and we just didn't know how much work was involved with that. And we didn't have a doula. I kind of just picked an OB that my friend had. I didn't really do any research on what to kind of give myself the best chances. So I ended up having a cesarean. And it wasn't just the cesarean. It was actually the experience during the cesarean was very traumatic to me. So it's kind of like what Nora was talking about. Like everybody there probably thought it was like an ordinary cesarean, but the experience, being tied down and kind of not wanting to have this happen this way, and having people talk over me like I wasn't there, So all of that was like super traumatic to me. So in the postpartum period, it was hard because I'm recovering from major, abdominal surgery. I'm very disappointed. I'm very sad. I'm having kind of these memories of how scary everything felt. PTSD, is what really that is. Having trouble nursing, everything is just really compounded. And so I think for a while there, I just really had to process my birth and had a lot of sadness. And so really that's kind of what I experienced with my son. So I kind of just called it postpartum depression. Like I didn't really go to anyone right away or get diagnosed for it, but I did eventually go to a therapist just for processing my birth and just kind of working through things around that. And then so with my second child, I knew I wanted to have a VBAC. I knew I wanted to have a midwife and a doula. I wanted to do everything really differently. And I was a doula at that point too. Like my son's birth led me to this work. So I was pretty educated at that point, or a lot more educated than I had been the first time. I did have a really long birth and I did have a VBAC, but it wasn't like the easiest birth. So I feel like, in my healing from that, there was a little bit of like conflict a little bit and just like, why did that have to be so hard? You kind of feel like I made all these good decisions, I lined everything up differently. And I still had a vaginal birth, which is what I wanted, but it just wasn't as straightforward. So there was like a little bit of, I think, mourning with that too. But I had a lot of anxiety. So that's what was different after my second. And I think a lot of that was because I had a 6-year gap between my two kids, and because we weren't ready, to have a second baby right away. But having a 6-year-old and a newborn, it was like completely starting over. And so there was like a lot of anxiety with trying to kind of feel like I could do it all, and eventually I just kind of sucked it up and worked my way through it. I had lots of people that I could talk to, and I felt like I had enough support. But it wasn't easy at times, there were ups and downs with that. And with my third, I think my midwife had seen like how anxious and like she really thought like you were fragile for a little bit there afterwards. So she had some different things for me to do right after birth to kind of help my hormones. And so that part was good. Like I felt like things were a lot smoother with my third afterwards. But what ended up happening, which I had not had before, and he was also the child that I nursed the longest. Like I nursed him until he was 3.5. But when he weaned, I experienced depression with the weaning, which I had never heard about. This was 13 years ago. And I feel like just around that time, like all of a sudden, like I think I was like on Facebook and an article popped up that somebody posted. And I was just like, oh, that's what's happening. And I actually did reach out to my my primary care provider and did get on some medication for, I guess it was like that year, basically, just because it was so bad. Like I just felt really sad and then really irritable, especially like irritable with my 3.5-year-old. It just didn't feel normal. So that was a new experience for me to be aware of, postpartum or weaning depression, basically, with my clients, because I just had not been aware of that before.
Yeah, that was something I didn't know either, that I experienced with both of my kids. And it was worse with my first, actually. And yeah, that was something that is never talked about. And even when I asked my doctor about it, they were like, oh, that maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. But, I think having these groups to advocate for something like that seems small, but it's really not. You know, it's
No, look at this group right here. It's like 3 out of 3. Like,
right,
you
exactly.
know, those odds are pretty, those odds are not in our favor. So,
Sure. Um,
Yeah.
so what kind of signs do you see from women who are going through PMAD? Like, I know we all have our own different signs that we may not have seen, but what are some you may see with like a typical mom going through PMAD, or some of the like higher, you know, more significant signs that you might see?
Well, I think it's not always depression, which is the big thing that people always think is just postpartum depression. But some sadness that's not getting better. Usually we think of like the baby blues as like the first 2 weeks, maybe into the third week
Mm-hmm.
postpartum. But if you're still having a lot of sadness or lots of like bouts of crying, that just seems like it's pretty often.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good sign. Um, Definitely feeling anxious, feeling overwhelmed, irritable, either not sleeping enough or sleeping too much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some moms, like Nora talked about, the irritability can become like postpartum rage. Um, Also, either being like really fearful and extra like worried about the baby,
Mm-hmm.
like some of the OCD, like just kind of having these like same thoughts that are scary. Or the flip side can be not really being as bonded, and kind of not wanting to do as much with the baby. It doesn't seem normal.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure there's more that I haven't said, Nora.
yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest would be like people are always asking like, how's the baby sleeping? And if you're not able to sleep because you're like wired and just kind of panicking or going in, I think it's normal to go check in on your baby like more than you would have ever checked on another person sleeping. But if you can't get even, you know, a 4-hour stretch of sleep at any point months into your postpartum because you're still you know, staring at the monitor or hovering over the crib, I think that is a sign. I think too, just anytime like sadness or anxiety are getting in the way of normal functioning, because people experience, you know, depression and anxiety, even, you know, that aren't parents, but once you have the responsibility to care for another person, if it's getting in the way of you doing that, it's probably affecting your confidence in your new role. And so I think that is a prompt to really at least talk to someone, you know, and just see if there's more underlying there. And if not, it can't ever hurt to just have talked through, you know, the experience of becoming a parent with someone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, like you had touched on before, of doctors kind of being uninformed too. It was hard to kind of find which route to take, which is why Postpartum Support International of Virginia are great resources. Because I do remember going to my OB and saying like, oh, you know, I'm feeling off. And she's like, okay, here's Zoloft. It's like, wait, you don't even know anything about what I'm going through. So
Right.
it's good to know the signs, and it's good to know, you know, what, I guess it's also important to know what you can ask your doctor just based on the signs that you can read about and hear about PMADs. Because I think, and it's great that they changed that name, or like, you know, that
I mean,
term.
huge.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, because I think it encapsulates a lot of what moms go through, where they're like, I'm not depressed, but I I do, like what you're saying, hover over my child, and I'm not sleeping, and I just have to make sure that they're breathing. And it's a lot of anxiety, and it's different um, things that have to do with your mood that are not necessarily depression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that can be really persistent. Like I think if it's getting in the way of, you know, like in my personal experience, like I wasn't wanting to do some of the things with my son that I normally would, because I felt like I was a concern, when really it was just, hormones sort of trying to convincing me of that. And I didn't know how to handle the line of thinking that I was being presented with. But yeah, and I just had never even heard of the term intrusive thoughts. So I think it can be such a really wide range of symptoms that I think basically if you're not feeling back to yourself in some way, like something just feels off, it's certainly worth talking to someone. Can't hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with Sara, go ahead.
I was just going to say too, like, as the person in it too, like you may not realize, but your partner, who knows you, knows, what you're typically like, should be able to tell, like, something seems different here, and as doulas, like we talk to the partners about what to look for postpartum. So they have an idea of what's normal and then what's not normal, like when they might want to like give us a call or give the woman's care provider a call, but we remind them, like, you have all these resources, and so it's interesting to kind of talk about like what I went through, because I just wasn't aware of the resources back then. Like when I really could have used some help in 2003, it wasn't as easily accessible, like the internet and our smartphones and the groups everywhere. So I kind of just battled through it on my own, but it's really, like, I love being a part of groups now that we can say, like, hey, it's okay, we're here. Like, you're going to get through this. And to be that support. It's kind of like the stigma, that can be out there sometimes too, why people don't reach out for help.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because I know, the stigma kind of hopefully lessens as time goes on, but back when in 2003, when you had your child, then how was, like, I guess, what was the feeling around PMADs and all of that then versus now, in your opinion?
Yeah, I don't think they were really talking as much about the anxiety piece of it, because that's definitely what I was having with my second child. I think we called it postpartum then, and people sometimes still will say postpartum. I had postpartum, and we just think. But postpartum is really the first year, after the baby's born. And that's one thing too we talk about, like with Nora, like it happened kind of late for you too, right? And not everybody realizes that.
Yeah, and like you said too, Telly, I think postpartum is the hereafter. And there's a lot of, if you choose to nurse for longer than the first year, or even however long you are successful with that, that's like a whole other gaping window of concern there that no one talks about. So yeah. And I think,
I think a lot of people, at least what I heard, was that postpartum depression and, these feelings that you have where it can lead to postpartum depression is, the signs that are pointing that way, that it'll be over at a year. And that year mark should be the time when this all lightens up and it's over. But that's when it kind of started that's when it took off for me. Like it started around 5 months, a little bit before that. But then from 12 months until probably 2 months ago, when my daughter was turning 2, right before I got on medication, that's when it took off. A year to a year and a half or something. So, it doesn't just go away after a year.
No, and I think and I think it's really important to reframe that for people, because you are, online looking for what on earth is wrong with you, and like that you feel like you're out of the woods with whatever the postpartum period could deliver, but not so. I think it really needs a reframe.
Yeah. Why do you think there is such a stigma around it? Around, PMADs in general, but also therapy, medication, like, because there is a stigma around it, but where do you think it comes from? For either one of you to answer.
I mean, I think, no, it's fine. I think, it's a time period where people are really feeling hopeful when they're pregnant. And then going into new parenthood, I think there's, if you look at how we get ready for parenthood in our culture, like a baby shower and, it's kind of things that you're fussing over that are not really what actually matters when you get down to the heart of it. When you bring a new baby home, they don't care if you have a snoo. It's like, is the mom okay? Can she rest so that she can then take care of the baby? And that's not how we talk about it in our culture. And I also think it's the time where you expect that you're going to have had like this, a great love of your life is born, and it's supposed to be this wonderful thing. And, for some of us, we're lucky and it feels like that, but then it's still complicated. And it's not a time period where anybody wants to necessarily, or we don't feel like it's a time to talk about that. People want to see like your cute baby pictures. They don't want to hear that like your nipples are cracked and you can't stop crying, or you're like yelling at your husband because he made a sound. I don't think we have a spot for that in our culture, which is one reason like holding space. I think it's really important for women to find places where people are asking them how they are, and not just like, what stroller do you like? Yeah. All the mom groups I went to, it was great to have social contact, but it was mostly like, they're so cute. What pacifier is that? Like very cute items, but like not the meat of what was happening there. So
yeah.
But yeah, I think there's not a lot of spots like in our world where that's feels like the right forum.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And kind of like what you were saying with all the stuff that people kind of put on their registries, there is a registry that I saw that I thought was really interesting. And I wonder if it was a mom that had gone through PMADs with her first, but it was a registry that had massages on it, things to care for the mom. And one of them was therapy sessions, to pay for therapy.
That's awesome.
I mean, I had never thought to put something like that on my registry, but those are things that you actually need afterwards.
Yeah, and even, doula care, like that's something that can be on a registry. And I think education, childbirth education, like you can put any of that on a registry, and that's something that's just going to set you up for so much greater success. Way better than a Wubbanub or whatever,
Yeah, I think babies need stuff, but then mom needs stuff too. And I think the registry should be for both mom and baby.
200%. Yeah.
So with the stigma around PMADs, do you think that it becomes highly underreported? Because I know there are reported numbers of, 1 in 4 women experience this. But do you think the number is actually higher than that?
Yeah.
For certain.
So do you think that the reason it is underreported is the stigma, or why do you think women, moms particularly, are not reporting things like this?
I think people don't know. We didn't, when you don't know what the name for something is, then it's hard to identify. And, in the doula training I'm going through, the instructor was saying that about 10% of couples, in her experience that she knew of, went to childbirth education. And so if like, there's only that amount of people, which, of course that is like a socioeconomic thing in a lot of ways. And not everyone can make the time or has the resources for that. But that's where you're maybe clued into a lot of this. And so if you're going into the gate not even knowing that any of this exists, then how could you ever really identify it? And we learned in our postpartum support Virginia training, like everyone kind of has a little bit of it's like a score almost of how high risk you are going into pregnancy and the postpartum phase, just based on like your mental health background, your family situation, if whether or not you end up being a NICU parent. There's just so many different factors but it can be somewhat, you can kind of tell where there is a person that might have more red flags than others that might need more care. But those are the same communities and groups of people that don't always have the resources to be getting this education, because it's just out of reach in like mainstream healthcare. So I think people don't know what's wrong in order to say, you know.
Yeah. And I think too, sometimes women might feel ashamed, or they might blame themselves, like just feel like if I can just do this or that a little bit, you know, better, or, you know, hang in there more, you know, that maybe it'll just kind of go away. It could be navigating systems too, like trying to find the therapist, or does my insurance do this or that, you know. So that's why too, I think Postpartum Support Virginia has such a great website with like all the resources. So you can go on there and look up, you know, any major city in Virginia, and there's resources listed there, you know. So, you know, I wish something like that was more prevalent when I was having babies, because I definitely would have taken advantage of it.
Yeah, it's interesting to know that, you know, 2003 is not long ago, but the conversation around it has shifted in such a way. And I'm sure when our parents were new parents, like this wasn't talked about at all.
Oh, no, I'm certain not. Yeah.
The generation differences are very, very different. And, you know, culturally things are different. 'Cause I know I grew up on Guam, and the culture around therapy and medication and talking about anything mental health wise was just something that nobody talked about. So you know, thinking about different cultural norms, I can imagine that also probably adds to the stigma and adds to the underreporting, which is hard to know an actual number of who's going through this, and it could be an actual 1 in 2 instead of, you know, what is actually reported. But so one of the things that I've always heard after having a baby was, you just need some self-care. You just need to go get your nails done, have a massage. You know, that's what self-care is. But through my 2 years after having my daughter, I realized that's not self-care that I need. So what are some self-care ways, or like, you know, just ways to care for yourself through different symptoms of PMAD that you found have been helpful for you and for moms that you've also cared for?
Well, I talk about sleep a lot with my clients. So we talk about, you know, the first 2 weeks postpartum, you need to be like having 2 naps a day, you know, sometime in the morning and then sometime in the afternoon. You know, and all the different reasons that this is so important is, you know, you're recovering from birth, you're making milk. There is a correlation between sleep and mood. And you're also going to be waking up, you know, 2 to 3 times in the middle of the night to nurse and change a diaper. And so those naps during the day, and for the partner, I tell the partner too, like, you need to rest too. That's going to offset, you know, all that waking up in the middle of the night. And then after 2 weeks, I let them know, like, you might have like more energy during the day to kind of feel like I can kind of get through this. But still, like that afternoon nap, like you are going to need to do that for a while, like really listen to your body. Because those evening hours get hard, the sunset blues, the baby that, you know, wants to cluster feed. And if you're not having at least one nap for quite a while, that is, your patience is going to be really low. That's going to be really trying for you, you know? So we talk about that. And then also too, like people that are definitely suffering from PMADs, like there are going to be times where you have to like make a plan to try to get like 4 to 5 hour stretches of sleep, you know? So sometimes it might need to be a little bit longer than what is normal for like the breastfeeding relationship, you know? So we have to kind of like find a balance because, you know, babies are nursing every 2 to 3 hours. But we also have to find this balance with this mom's health too. So lots of discussions on that. Eating healthy, like just like you were eating healthy, nurturing foods in pregnancy, like you continue that postpartum. Lots of like high protein intake, basically just a lot of grazing, you know, snacking and you know, continuously eating like when your baby's eating. And then we talk about like some just like some small walks, just getting your body kind of moving a little bit postpartum. Definitely just exercise in general, like once you're like at that 6-week place where you've been given the okay to like go back to walking and yoga and all the things that you did before. But movement really makes a difference, I think, in mental health. So those things are important. We talk about talk therapy. People feel like they need a little bit more outside of like a support group. And then occasionally some medication, you know. Some people might need that if it's a little bit more than just like these self-care things, you know, can do. Did I miss anything, Nora?
I don't think so. I mean, that sounds like the kit. The only thing I would add is like finding ways that you still feel like yourself, like you're connecting to who you are before you had a baby, like whatever nugget of truth is you, and finding some way to connect with that, even if it's like, you know, finding 10 minutes to sit on the back porch and like drink tea by yourself and just being lost in your thoughts, or, you know, carving out 10 minutes to talk to your partner about not your baby. Just something. I don't think you can even be prescriptive about it because I think it's individual to each person and each family. But I think there is a lot of like trying to figure out who you are now and missing who you just were, like, you know, a week ago, 2 weeks ago before you gave birth. So trying to connect to that person, I think, and like just keeping her going, you know. I think that's really important, whatever it looks like for each person.
Yeah, I felt like that that period, you know, having the baby and, you know, through that 1 year postpartum is kind of like, I know I went through the stages of grief in a way, of grieving my old life, and becoming a mom and entering this new job, because I like to think of it like a job. I mean, sometimes it is, sometimes, you know, and you can't enjoy your job every day. Like even if you love everything that you do, it's like you can't enjoy it 100% of the time. And so having that little nugget really helped me on my hard days, just thinking like, okay, that's fine. You know, I don't need to enjoy it every day, and I don't need to enjoy every single moment, regardless of what movies tell you.
Totally.
Yeah, it's okay to not enjoy certain periods. So in closing, MyBirth offers a lot of really awesome resources, a lot of really awesome people that can help you and guide you along the way in classes. So I know you talked a little bit about in the beginning, how does MyBirth look now? You know, you were saying things are virtual, but where can we find you online? What kind of classes are still offered right now? And if they wanted to find you all as doulas, I guess, where can we find you to do that?
Okay. So we have a website, mybirthrba.com. So it's a very well done website. So everything's laid out very nicely there. We also have Facebook and Instagram. So you just look up MyBirth, and that's both very active. So right now we have some free videos on Facebook from our yoga instructors. So that's something that we have been kind of letting people know about as a way to kind of move and kind of meditate through this time. So there's lots of videos, like they've been doing them like twice a week now for like the past 10 or 11 weeks.
That's awesome.
So yeah, Katie and Elizabeth kind of alternate. So those are on our Facebook page. For classes, we're doing Zoom classes for childbirth education. There's 2 different childbirth education classes that we offer. So for like a first-time couple or somebody maybe going for a VBAC, somebody that isn't as well versed in evidence-based birth and physiological birth, they might want to do the 4-week series. So once a week usually on Sundays. So that's the MyBirth class. And then we also have like a 3-hour kind of a quick childbirth education class. So if somebody needs like a condensed version, it might be like a repeat second or third time mom. Like that might be a good choice for them. I teach 2 different lactation classes. So one is just a basic successful breastfeeding class. And then the other one is a pumping and milk storage class. So that's geared towards a mom preparing to go work outside the home. So even though, you know, moms might still be working at home, the knowledge of pumping and storing and introducing a bottle for the first time, those kind of ideas are important. We also have a kind of like a baby basics kind of class. So it's called My Baby class. So that's a good one for learning all the things that you need to learn. We kind of got these ideas. We're doing a lot of these classes because a lot of the hospital classes had stopped when the coronavirus first started. So it's like we were kind of trying to kind of have this be accessible for everybody. But our baby class really does also touch on some postpartum things for moms too. So it isn't just about the baby. So that's a really informative class, I think. And we've kind of always had that mentality that the mom and baby are a unit, you know, so we have to discuss both things after birth. So I believe that is it for that.
Okay.
And holding space is still there, but virtually. Yeah. So we're still having the support group once a month. We were doing twice a month, but it seems like there's a lot of resources out there. So people are seem to be well taken care of from what we can see. But we are still meeting on Zoom once a month. So that's there too.
And what days and times do you guys have holding space?
It is the first Wednesday of every month from 10 to 11:30 a.m.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And we can, we'll spread the word through you too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we always tell people if they'd like to join the meeting, they can email holdingspacerba@gmail.com, and then we'll send out the Zoom link. We try to keep it private, you know, we don't post it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's coming up soon on June 3rd.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for, sharing your story, sharing your resources. MyBirth is awesome. That was one of the first places that I heard about resources to find, help for myself. So I appreciate what you guys do, and I appreciate the work that you guys do as doulas, because I think that's something that's highly needed. So yeah, thank you for everything. And I hope
you.
Yeah, thank you for gathering people and telling stories.
Yeah, of course. We'll talk soon, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ellie.
Bye.